In the dim light of a solitary lamp, Justen Faull and J.C. Johnson pored over ancient manuscripts and modern reports. Their small office, cluttered with books, artifacts, and eerie relics, was a sanctuary for the forgotten and the forbidden. Here, tales of cryptids and hybrid creatures were not mere myths, but terrifying realities waiting to be uncovered.
Have you ever wondered, Justin began, his voice barely above a whisper, how much of our history is shrouded in secrecy? How many of those bedtime stories were warnings rather than fantasies?
J.C. nodded, his eyes fixed on a particularly gruesome depiction of a Nephilim, a creature born of human and demonic union.
It's not just history, Justin. It's our present, and possibly our future. The more we dig, the more we realize that these ancient horrors are far from extinct.
As they delved into the lore of the Nephilim, beings mentioned in the days of Noah, they couldn't shake off the feeling that they were being watched. Outside, the world was a shadowy landscape, teeming with secrets waiting to be revealed. Little did they know, their journey into the dark origins of these creatures would lead them to confront not just ancient horrors, but modern terrors born from the sinister breakthroughs in science. The story of the Nephilim is one of the oldest and most chilling texts in human history. According to the ancient text from the Book of Enoch, these beings were the offspring of the fallen angels and the human women, a union that brought forth giants with immense strength and unholy powers.
Justin and J.C. began their journey by examining the Book of Enoch, an ancient Jewish text that provided a detailed account of the Nephilim. The Book of Enoch, Justin explained, was excluded from the canonical Bible, perhaps because its contents were too disturbing.
As they sifted through the text, they found references to the Watchers, fallen angels who descended to earth and took human wives. The children born from these unions were the Nephilim, giants who spread chaos and destruction.
Look at this. J.C. pointed to a passage describing the Nephilim's insatiable hunger for flesh, both animal and human. These creatures were more than just giants. They were predators.
Their research led them to an archaeological site in the Middle East, where a series of ancient tablets had been unearthed. These tablets depicted monstrous beings with human and animal features, suggesting that the Nephilim were not merely giants, but hybrid creatures. One tablet, in particular, caught their attention. It showed a winged figure, towering over a city, with humans bowing in fear.
Could this be a Nephilim? Justin wondered aloud. Or perhaps one of their progenitors?
As they prepared to leave, an old scholar approached them.
"Beware," he warned, his voice trembling. "The Nephilim are not just legends, they live among us, hidden in the shadows, waiting for their time to rise again."
The duo dismissed the warning as mere superstition, but an unsettling feeling lingered. The ancient horrors they had read about seemed to echo through the ages, whispering of a dark truth that refused to die. Modern science, with all its advancements, has always danced on the edge of ethics. Justen and J.C. turned their attention to recent breakthroughs in genetics, particularly the controversial field of animal-human hybrids.
Legislation has been passed, J.C. noted, that allows for the creation of animal-human hybrids for medical research. But what if there's more to it?
Their investigation led them to a clandestine laboratory in a remote part of the country. This lab, funded by a shadowy organization, was rumored to be experimenting with chimera embryos, creatures that combined human and animal DNA. Posing as researchers, Justen and J.C. managed to gain access to the lab. What they found was beyond their worst nightmares. In sterile white rooms, grotesque creatures floated in tanks, their features a horrifying blend of human and beast.
"This is monstrous," Justen whispered as they observed a chimera with the body of a human but the head of a wolf. "They're playing God."
As they delved deeper, they discovered records of failed experiments, creatures that were too unstable to survive. Yet, there were also signs of success, hybrids that were not only alive, but thriving.
"We have to expose this," J.C. said, his voice filled with determination. "The world needs to know what's happening here."
But their attempts to gather evidence were thwarted. Security was tight, and the lab's personnel were fiercely protective of their work. It became clear that this was not just a scientific endeavor, but part of a larger, more sinister agenda. Before they could escape, they were captured and brought before the head scientist, Dr. Morgan.
"You've seen too much," she said coldly. "But perhaps you can be useful to us."
Justen and J.C. were given a choice: join the project or become part of it. With no other option, they pretended to cooperate, all the while planning their escape. They knew that what they had uncovered was only the beginning of a much darker conspiracy. Escaping the lab, Justen and J.C. headed to the American Southwest, where rumors of a skinwalker cult had surfaced. The Navajo people spoke of these shape-shifting witches with fear and reverence, describing them as evil beings capable of taking the form of animals. The duo arrived in a small Navajo village, where they were met with suspicion. "Outsiders are not welcome here," an elder told them, especially those seeking the skinwalkers. Despite the warning, they managed to convince a local guide, Daniel, to help them.
"The skinwalkers are real," Daniel said, his voice filled with dread. "I've seen them. They can become any animal, but they prefer wolves and coyotes."
As they ventured deeper into the desert, they encountered signs of the cult, a circle of stones, bloodstains, and strange symbols etched into the sand. The air grew colder, and an eerie silence enveloped them. One night, as they camped, they heard the howl of a wolf.
"It's them," Daniel whispered. "We need to move."
But it was too late. From the shadows, a figure emerged, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. It shifted between human and animal form, a grotesque display of its power.
"We mean no harm," Justen called out, but the creature lunged at them.
They barely managed to fend it off, using silver knives Daniel had brought, a known weapon against skinwalkers. The encounter left them shaken.
"These aren't just myths," J.C. said, his voice trembling. "They're real, and they're dangerous."
They decided to confront the cult directly. Guided by Daniel, they found an underground chamber where the skinwalkers conducted their rituals. The stench of death was overwhelming, and the walls were adorned with human and animal bones. In the center, a high priestess chanted, her eyes glowing with an unholy light. "You dare to trespass?" she hissed. "You will join us or perish." With no time to think, they fought their way out, barely escaping with their lives. They knew they had to warn the world about the skinwalkers, but who would believe them? Chapter 4. Winged Horrors. Reports of winged hominids began to surface from various parts of the world. These creatures, described as human-like with bat-like wings, were causing panic and fear.
Justen and I decided to investigate, starting with a remote forest where sightings were most frequent. The locals spoke of a creature that swooped down at night, attacking livestock and sometimes people.
The legend of the Mothman, J.C. mused. Could it be related?
Our search led us deep into the forest, where we found a cave littered with bones and tattered clothing.
"This is a feeding ground," Justen said, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. As night fell, they set up cameras and waited. Hours passed in tense silence until they heard the flapping of wings. A shadow passed overhead, and the creature landed before them. It was more horrifying than they had imagined. A towering figure with leathery wings, glowing red eyes, and talons that could rip through flesh. It let out a blood-curdling screech, sending chills down their spines.
We managed to capture footage of the creature, but it attacked our equipment, destroying most of it. In the ensuing chaos, we barely escaped, with Justen suffering a deep gash on his arm.
Back in civilization, they reviewed the damaged footage. Though blurry, it clearly showed the winged horror.
"This is proof," I said, "but how do we stop it?"
They decided to seek help from an expert in cryptozoology, Dr. Harper. She suggested that the creature might be a result of genetic experiments gone wrong.
"We need to find its origin," she urged. "Only then can we hope to stop it."
Their search for the creature's origin would lead them to the heart of a conspiracy that linked back to the lab they had escaped from. The winged horrors were not just cryptids, but the results of human hubris and dark science. Chapter 5. The Chimera Conspiracy. Delving deeper into the world of genetic experiments, Justen and J.C. uncovered a conspiracy that spanned continents. High-ranking officials and scientists were involved in creating chimeras, hybrid creatures that combined the DNA of humans and animals.
Our investigation led us to a secret facility in Eastern Europe, where we posed as journalists. Inside, we found creatures that defied nature, part human, part animal, and entirely terrifying.
"We need to shut this down," Justen said, his voice filled with determination. "These experiments are an abomination."
But the facility was heavily guarded, and our every move was watched. We managed to gather evidence, including photos and documents, but were discovered before we could escape.
Captured, they were brought before the facility's director, a man known only as Dr. Voss.
You can't stop us, he sneered. The world needs these hybrids. They are the future.
Justen and J.C. were imprisoned, but with the help of a sympathetic scientist, Dr. Elena, they managed to escape.
You need to expose this, Elena urged. The world must know what's happening here.
With the evidence in hand, they returned to the United States, determined to reveal the truth. They contacted media outlets, but their story was met with skepticism. The powers behind the conspiracy were too influential, and the evidence was dismissed as a hoax.
Frustrated but undeterred, we turned to the internet, releasing the evidence on social media and alternative news sites. The response was immediate and overwhelming. People demanded answers, and the conspiracy began to unravel.
But as the truth came to light, so did the danger. Justen and J.C. found themselves targeted by those who wanted to keep the secrets buried. They realized that their fight was far from over, and the hybrid creatures they had exposed were just the beginning. Thanks for watching this dramatized version about the Nephilim, Skinwalkers, and Chimeras. And for supporting my channel, please like, subscribe, and click the bell for more mysteries to uncover.